It is a cold, wet, windy, wintry day here in Western Australia. It's a lot of W's, but I've just got a new filter system and I wanted to try out for the first time. I'm also just getting over the flu or the virus that shall not be named on YouTube, so it's probably not going to be much of a long trip, especially if I trip over. I want to talk about why I've changed filter systems and why I think it's going to be a good idea. We're also dodging the rain today, so this is going to be a bit of a mission. Let's go. First thing I want to do is try and get out of this wind, because one of the filters I want to use is a long exposure filter, and it's just started raining again. So I'm going to try and explore that way a little bit and try and get past this headland without getting completely soaking feet, and we'll see if we can get set up out of the wind and then test out this new filter system. It doesn't look good though. It doesn't look good. All right, here goes. Just taking shelter in this little cavern. If I switch you around, you can see there's a little crack in the rock. It's not really a cavern. Just trying to get some respite from that gale force wind and driving rain. I'm hoping that this is just going to blow over in a few minutes so I can actually set up the camera, and then you can see down there how much water's flowing. So it must have pretty high tides and storm waters and storm winds. So yeah, could have probably done without this, but we'll soldier on and try and find a spot to film and try and find a spot out of the wind to set up the camera and stay dry and warm if possible. So I'm just trying to get set up so that when we do get a break in the rain, at least get the tripod in a rough position, even though I can't really get the camera out at the minute because everything's just going to get soaked. And you can see down here, just set up my tripod and everything really far up the beach, and got a massive wave just came in and almost took the tripod over. So even this is not the best position. Problem is, if I go any higher up, I'm going to be even more in the wind. Just keeping an eye on what's happening behind me, because I do not want the water getting up there. The water just came to about there, which is about there, even though I put the bag a bit higher up on that dune there. So I don't know, this is pretty crazy and not entirely enjoyable. We'll see what happens. I had to get out of that spot because it was getting super sketchy, and even the water was coming up to where that bag was on the dunes. So I thought I'd better at least try and get back past this area here so I can at least get back onto the main path out of here if I need to. And the wind is basically coming from everywhere. No matter where I go, there's wind from some direction. It's kind of vortexing around these rocks here. And at least the sun's come out for a minute. So I really want to try and find a composition, even if I can't get out of the wind as much as I'd want to. I've got to turn you this way so you can at least hear me over the wind. And what I'm going to do, set up a little composition here, and I don't think it's the best, but I'm just trying to get a bit out of the wind so that A, make it a bit more pleasant for myself, and B, because if I'm going to do a slightly long exposure, look at this hair, if I'm going to do a slightly long exposure, then I'm going to want that camera to be as solid as possible, and I just can't do that out there because it's even more windy. Oh, already covered in sand. Oh. Disgusting. Right, so I've decided to replace my existing filter system, which I've used for ages, which is a square filter system. You attach the filter holder and then you just slot the square filters in, and that was from Lee Filters, and I've been using Lee Filters for ages, but I've decided to switch to a magnetic circular system for a few different reasons really. Main reason is speed and convenience. When I'm out making these videos and doing photography at the same time, I really want that speed and convenience, and I want to do more long exposure photography, and one of the disadvantages of using square ND filters is you just got to make sure that they're exactly in the right spot so you don't get any light leaking underneath. But of course with a screw-on or magnetic filter, you've got I hope complete seal where the magnetic filter attaches to the magnetic holder. So we're going to go and try and get out, well at least we're going to try and get some photos before the rain starts again, which I'm not too hopeful about. So it's time to get set up. I'm going to fit a 10-stop ND filter. The nice thing about these filters which I'm using is that they're actually color coded, so I know straight away which one is the 10-stop filter. It's the one with a little red ring about it. I'll put links to these exact filters that I'm using in the description if you want to check them out, or the exact kit that I'm using. Got my photography gloves where I can take off the fingers, which is really helpful. Of course I'm getting sand on my new filters already. This is a bit of a crazy time. Alright, so this is the 10-stop. I've got to get the brush out to blow that sand off before I scratch my brand new filters. And of course I've forgotten my blower brush. This is terrible landscape photography. So I'm obviously not going to wipe that with sand on it. This is just ridiculous. All right, I'm going to fit this on. Problem I've got with the A7R4 that I'm filming on today is the longest shutter speed you can set is 30 seconds. After that, you've got to switch to bulb mode and then attach an external intervalometer or external timer, bulb timer to do that. So that's just slowing me down even more, and I'm really considering maybe I should switch up to a different camera, either the A7R5 or maybe switch to Nikon. Not sure. Let me know what you think in the comments if I should switch to Nikon. I'm really tempted at the minute for various reasons. So without the ND filter, we're looking at an exposure of 125th of a second, so I need to increase the exposure with the bulb timer to compensate for that 10 stops now. And I'm just going to use this little app to convert that. So 10-stop filter, initial exposure of 125. That's going to give an 8-second exposure, which is pretty long, especially with its watering around, and I think we'll just do it anyway. So I've got to go and use this remote intervalometer on the Sony now and make sure that I remember to focus before I start the exposure. Need to sort out the composition, of course. This filter is covered in dust already and sea spray, but I don't want to wipe it because I don't want to wipe sand over this thing without blowing it first. So again, this is not a very good first thing, and I don't know what's happening with this camera either. Look at that. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I'm just going to wipe it anyway. Luckily there's not really any sand on that. All right, let's get this done. Going to switch over to bulb mode now, and we need to set an 8-minute exposure. All right, here we go. So this is very much an example of how not to do landscape photography, I suppose. It's very tricky conditions today. So that's the 8-minute exposure is happening behind us. While that picture's taking, I thought I might just talk about a few other reasons why I decided to switch up filter systems. The main reason is that ND filter, that it's just so much quicker to use, and the magnetic filter is amazing because they just clip on, no fuss, job done, nothing to screw in. And of course you can leave the actual magnetic adapter on the lens the whole time and just take it out your camera bag, snap on that magnetic filter, and then you're good to go. In the kit I also got a 3-stop and 6-stop ND filter and also a polarizer. It's going to be tricky to try and demonstrate all of these things in these conditions today, but I'll probably do them in future videos, so subscribe for that if you're interested in seeing some of those other filters in action in better conditions. Of course, there are some drawbacks to circular filters, and one of the main drawbacks is in the past I've tended to make quite heavy use of graduated filters. So you can't even see me. Graduated filters, so where the filter kind of goes from darker to lighter to clear, and you just, with a square filter system, you can position that gradation of dark to light across the horizon or basically anywhere that you want, because you can move the glass filter up and down. Of course, a circular filter just goes straight on. You can't move it up and down. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a problem in the future, but with digital photography, it's very easy anyway to take multiple exposures and blend those exposures together to effectively create, sorry, I'm just looking at what I think is rain coming, which is fantastic. So obviously digital photography, you can take multiple exposures, bracket them, whatever, and then just blend those exposures to get more dynamic range. And effectively using a graduated filter is a way of getting more dynamic range or controlling the dynamic range so your camera can pick it up in a single shot. Right, let's see how much time we've got left on that 8-minute exposure. I'll talk about another problem of long exposure photography in these kind of conditions, is that depending on the longer the exposure, you're going to suffer more from changes in exposure. If like today, the clouds are going in and out of the sun, and so the range of brightness, range of exposure is varying wildly over that 8-minute exposure. So no matter how you meter that first thing before you put your ND filter on days like this, there's a kind of bit of luck involved, or you can wait for the brightest thing, so in a minute the sun is not behind the clouds, and you can meter in those conditions and then set your long exposure based on that meter reading. Of course, if during that exposure things get really dark, then you might start to suffer with some of the shadow areas, which you might be able to bring up, but you might introduce some noise in that. And it's part of the fun, I guess, is because I think long exposure photography is a little bit like film photography in that you never really know what you're going to get until the end of that exposure, whereas non-long exposure photography, you can simply take the photo and have a look straight away on the back of the screen, whereas with long exposure photography there's a little bit of anticipation. It's official, I'm a complete idiot. In all of the craziness in terms of the weather and trying to film this, it wasn't an 8-minute exposure, it was an 8-second exposure. So I've got a completely white image, which I'm not going to bother to show you. Let me go and fix that and get as an 8-second exposure, and then we'll have a look at it. well, that was thoroughly miserable. At least I'm out. The rain's starting again. Even got tiny spots of hail on the way back up, which was a nice little bit of icing on the cake. Those conditions were pretty kind of impossible to do long exposure photography with an ND filter, because that driving wind was just driving sea spray and tiny bits of sand onto the filter during the exposures, and within a few seconds the filter was just caked in it. So it's probably why there's going to be a loss of definition and sharpness in those images if they even come out at all. All that being said, I didn't get a chance to try out all of the different filters and show you them in action, which I'll do in a future video. So make sure you subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one in nicer weather. Bye.